Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are joined by Suzanne, Janet, and Helen. So thank you so much. We wanted to invite some breast cancer survivors in, sharing their experiences, the life hacks, and also for those of us who are supporting and helping on the journey. So thank you so much for joining this evening.
Of course, happy to.
Thank you. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about, we always hear about detection and early detection and how early is early and the earlier the better. So would love to get your thoughts as you think about early detection as a survivor. What is your secret, or what is something that you would share with others when you think about early detection?
Yeah, I would just say, just be on the lookout, be your own advocate all the time. I detected my own breast cancer at the age of 37, so I was not even due to have a mammogram. And I definitely didn't think it was anything, and just thought, oh, I'll be cautious, because it had just been October. I found mine in December, and I thought, oh, I'll just double check. And so I think just have it on the top of your mind, and if anything feels off even a little bit, just go for it. Just go get it checked out.
I love that.
So very similar. So I found my own. I was actually 42 at the time, so I should have started my mammograms at 40, and I put them off because I have no family history of breast cancer. And I knew I was going to do it, but I just hadn't. And then I found my own on an exam, also in December. And just initially, that was my first thing, like, oh, this is not any big deal, but I'm going to go get it checked out, and did. I actually am twice I've had cancer, and so 9 years later, in getting my routine mammograms is when the second one was found, and it was a totally different one, not related to the first one. So both mammograms and checking yourself has helped me both times.
That's awesome.
Well, excuse me. I would say, like, the best hack I could give is not to rely on the fact that you maybe don't have a genetic history. As you mentioned, I think that before being diagnosed with breast cancer, sort of labored under an illusion that I wasn't likely to get it because I had no family history. And now, of course, I know that nothing could be further from the truth. But I was 43 when I was diagnosed, and it was my first mammogram. And I had a baby at 40 and was breastfeeding, and so it was a little bit sort of late. But even had a doctor try to get me to go in for a mammogram about 6 months prior, and I had kind of blown it off, thinking that it wasn't really a big deal. And as it turned out, of course it was. So I highly recommend not thinking it couldn't happen to me, because truly it could happen to anyone.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Really appreciate that. And I know that it's routine mammograms and then finding yourself. So something that we just want to stress and emphasize. And one of the things I always hear just in the field and from different individuals, they get the self-exam mixed up with the mammogram. Mm-hmm. And I've heard people, oh, we need to start the self-exams at 40. No. And so everyone you'll see different guidelines, but 20 is really when you look at the guidelines. So starting the self-exams at 20. And then in some cases, it's fine to start them earlier with a family history. But like we've shared and discovered, not everyone has that family history. And curious, if you were going back and you were able to give yourself any advice, what advice would you give your younger, less experienced self?
With dealing with the breast cancer, is that
really anything, detection, cancer, just something you could have told yourself before maybe you found out, or maybe during the process?
Well, during the process, so the first time, like I said, I was 42, did not expect it when I got the call I had gone into my gynecologist, and he did, and and when he called me, I was in a car driving, and just did not expect it at all. And at the time, young, with family, I had 5 kids, and I just got scared really fast. Mm-hmm. And hearing the word cancer, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be here for my kids, and I need to hurry and get something done about this. And so he said, oh yeah, I know this great surgeon, we'll just get you right in. And he's like, he can see you tomorrow. I'm thinking, that's great, get me in tomorrow. Went and saw this surgeon who was an older surgeon, and wasn't up on the latest and greatest of what you should do. And he's like, oh, we can go in and, you know, do the lumpectomy and take everything and do what we need to do. And I was just like, great, you're going to get it out of me. I figured that was the best. Had that done. And then his recommendation was like, oh, it wasn't that big a deal, so you can just go get radiation. I'm like, oh, okay. So he set me up with my doctor. He looked at me and he says, no way. He says, you're too young. This is what this I see. And then he set me up with my oncologist. And then went through him, and I did end up having to do all the chemo and everything to make sure I was totally clear and had no chance. So the second time where it was different is that I knew I had time. It isn't something that's going to take a life in a week or more. You know, you have time. My recommendation is find a good surgeon who deals with breast cancer. My second experience was super different. I had a surgeon who here works in American Fork, and that's all she deals with. She is wonderful. And my meet with her was totally different because she was able to go through. We talked about all the difference. Because it was a different diagnosis, there was a chance that I needed to do some chemo before we even did the lumpectomy, and we talked about. So having that was a huge difference, is having this surgeon who knew. And also, when you talk about breast cancer, the first surgeon, not knowing, being older, he did the whole lymph node. I had multiple 30 plus lymph nodes removed, which gives me complications later on. What I come to realize is it's called sentinel nodes, and that is the way it should be done. And the second one was different, so I have less complications because of that. So it's scary, but know you have time to find the doctor and the oncologist that will work with you, and that you work with them for the best treatment.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. I had the experience where I got three opinions from 3 different oncologists. I was just trying to do my research as best I could, and they all 3 gave me different recommendations for treatment. My treatment plan was different with all 3 of them, to the tune of number of chemo treatments and which drugs I should use and all of that stuff. And so it's actually a very trying time trying to figure out what was right. But it was just a real season of just doing my own looking, gathering as much information as I could from the best sources possible, and then having to take that and make a decision with my team that I chose.
Yeah, I would say that I would tell my, I guess, slightly younger self, it's only been a couple of years of survivorship for me, to take care of my health in general. I learned so much from the process about how important, just the basics of exercise and fruits and vegetables and all the things. And I feel like keeping my stress levels down, all those things. So I wish I had started the health journey that breast cancer created for me earlier in my life, because I think it's possible it could have helped prevent it. But then as to like post-diagnosis, so I was diagnosed, my sister's a nurse practitioner, and I was having pain in my armpit, and I said, I've got something. I thought like I'd done something to the muscle. She felt it, and she said, oh no, I think it's breast cancer. You need to go get a mammogram. And I was like, I thought she was crazy. I thought that couldn't possibly be the case. And I had no idea until obviously after the fact that was even a sign of breast cancer, if you had pain in your armpit. And anyway, so I would say that, like, in addition to, taking great care of your health before, during, and after treatment, just being a detective and being your own best advocate. I found that I got a lot of great information from my doctors, and then also from other survivors and, nurses and folks who ran the wellness center at the cancer hospital where I was treated. And so sort of across the board, I just felt like I was always gathering information and putting it all together. And it was kind of together telling me the story of how I should progress through the treatment journey. So,
yeah, thank you for sharing that. I had a friend tell me that it was interesting. She had 4 or 5 opinions for her son's braces, but did not do that for herself. So she's like,
Right.
It's interesting that we're very nurturing, taking care. And she's like, I can imagine just throwing braces on a son without multiple opinions. But then when it came to her own health, she was just like, go and get it done. So I love the different pieces of feedback. So thank you so much. And during difficulties, we always hear and we know the different difficulties. And for maybe some of the people that are going through the journey right now, what were some of the difficulties and what advice or how did you get through them?
I mean, there's a lot of difficulties. It's a really hard time. And I think it's okay to just recognize that that is a season. It is a season for you to focus on you, and that is okay. And to just allow others to help you, and to, you know, try to help your family as best you can and do everything that you can. But just that, you know, it's just what that time is. It's difficult. It hurts. You're tired all the time. Things are better now. Like, I'm coming on 10 years. I know things are different. I know, isn't that awesome? But just that, yeah, it's just super hard. And I think one of the hardest things for me was just the mental game, the unknown of the whole thing. Like, when you say you're first diagnosed and you're just like, let's go, we got to get this done. And it was so much, I felt that too. And am I going to be here to see my kids grow up? And you just feel the fear, literally the fear of dying. But the truth of breast cancer is, with early detection, it is so, so hopeful. So I just want everyone to keep that in mind too, that there's so much hope for all of us.
That's awesome. I love you use the word season. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. I know one thing, I'm also a nurse at the hospital, so I work critical care, but I get to interact with different cancer people. And one recommendation I always gave them is I journaled through my chemo, how I felt each day, how it was going to go, what I could eat, what I couldn't eat. Because it was interesting, when I went 3 weeks later and was doing it all again, sometimes I'd think, I don't remember this, but then I'd start reading what I journaled. I thought, okay, I'm on day 2. Day 3 will be this way. Day 4, by day 5, I'm going to be this way. And so I was just very meticulous in how I journaled, and it helped me with each round of chemo so that I would know, okay, I'm going to get through this, because certain days are really, really bad, and then it starts getting a little bit better. And what I would do to sometimes get over whatever was happening with, you know, the complications of chemo.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Really great feedback.
Well, I would agree that the emotional journey is the challenges associated with the emotional part of it, and you're coming to grips with your own mortality and all that, is much, much harder than the physical journey. At least it was for me. I was toward like sort of the side effects of chemo and radiation, and, you know, recovering from surgery and all of that, and even like the hormone medication and all of it. I just tried to take like a problem solving approach, where I really just did my research for each stage I was at, and asked, you know, everyone I could possibly ask for what their advice and tips was. And then I sort of synthesized it, and I found that the chemo and all of it, for me, it was pretty bearable. And I mean, you know, not that it was easy by any means, but I just thought that being proactive about mitigating your side effects and exploring sort of all the different ways you can nurture your body, it was really helpful for me at every stage. And then, yeah, I think just the fear. I mean, my kids were 2 and 6, and, you know, the thought of not being there for them as they grew up, that was by far the most challenging part of the journey. But, you know, I leaned into my community, and I'd say that's another big piece, letting people support you and letting that love in, because it really does, I think, create better healing outcomes. So
I love that about community. And we actually just wrote a blog, and as I talked to several different survivors, they said, when people would say, what do I need? I didn't even know what I needed. They're like, so don't ask what we need. Just do stuff or offer, give us multiple choice. So I'm curious, if you think back, was there something that was really helpful, or if you were sharing with support or people that want to support survivors and people in the journey, what were those things that were just really awesome for you? Or what was something that would be a fun surprise, or something that you would get or have done for you that was really helpful?
So I would say the two things. One of my girlfriends hired a cleaning service to come and clean my house for months and months while I was in the middle of treatment, and that was invaluable. I couldn't have been more grateful for that. That really was. And then I found that I'm a big like holiday celebration person. I love traditions and decorating my house with my kids and all that. So I found that kind of grounding myself in those traditions that sort of felt normal, especially because I was going through all of the chemo and everything in 2020 during the height of the
Oh
pandemic
my
and
goodness.
everything. So my kids were home. I mean, it was like just the perfect storm, but it was so helpful as we were just stuck at home for over a year to like have our little traditions and our and everything. So um, I would say that's the other piece. And I've taken to when I have friends and family members who are moms and they're going through cancer treatment. I tend to send them like little boxes of activities to do with their kids. Or, one mom who was going through cancer, I offered to make Easter baskets for her kids that year because, you still want to have all those memories and traditions. You want them even more than, under normal circumstances, but you don't have the energy because you're so exhausted from treatment. So if people can help you sort of continue to do that, I think that's huge. So
So many good ideas. Thank you.
Yeah, I would build off of what you said, Helen. I like going through the chemo myself, like it was hard. But what I worried about most when I'm laying in that bed feeling like garbage is my kids,
totally.
because I knew they needed more than I could give them. And so what was such a blessing for me was how our community, how our people rallied around my kids, and they say, "What can I do for you?" And I'm like, please just love my kids, give them a little bit extra time, a little bit of
Yes.
extra attention because I can't give it. And that was huge for me to know that there were people that loved me, who were loving my kids and making sure they were okay, taking their house for play dates. They would make their school lunches and bring them over, and just like their teachers at school were just amazing. And that was a huge gift to me during all that.
That's awesome.
I agree. My first, like when I was 42, all my kids were in their teenage. I think my oldest was 12 at the time. And I think I was a little different is I really wanted my teenagers to know I was going to be okay. So I tried to be a little stronger around them. So I used the adults in my life for the strength. And then when I was around my kids, I did try to, I did my best to get to a soccer game, even though I was all bundled up and I might be sitting in the car. But like, hey, mom's still going to be able to make it, even, she might not sit out on the field, but she can do it. And so it's like finding those people, like when they say, you can just say, yeah, can you help me get this kid to a practice, or can you do that? Or, but I think then the second time is when I was older, I actually had grandkids, and part of my treatments, some of my chemos ran over 8 hours just from complications I had. And I let my kids at that point, they knew how to support me, and they would bring in the grandkids and they would sit with me, and they would, as I'm sitting in there for 8 hours, I mean, that day you're feeling fine on chemo day, and chemo day doesn't make you feel bad. It's every day after that. So I found you only have so much energy, so I just would tell people, I need energy for these people, and don't feel bad that I don't have energy for everybody else. And they were really, I loved when people were good about that they didn't push. Some people try to be more and says like, no, I really am fine. I really just need it to be quiet at the house and let me sleep, kind of thing. And so sometimes it's just keep doing it, but don't over push. If they say they're doing okay, they're probably doing okay.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love all these. And I'm going to build on what you said, Helen. I love you talked about just celebrating and pushing through. Were there other ways that you celebrated, not just holidays, but either milestones or ways that you celebrated, and what did you do?
One of my favorite things that we did, I mean, it sounds funny to say, but there were like these nice memories at different points in the journey, was when I finished chemo. We were still in the height of the pandemic, but I have some neighbors who play the guitar and sing in like a little like two-person kind of band, and we did like an outdoor front yard concert, and because no one could be inside and we were social distancing and all that. So I had a lot of friends and family who just came and sat outside, and I was like up on the porch, and we listened to like live music, and in the middle of the pandemic in particular, it just felt so good because again, it felt normal. And there's just I can't emphasize enough, especially for at least I think as a mom, like you just want things to feel normal for your kids. I loved what you said about like talking to the adults in your life and not your teenagers about what you were going through. I mean, I think the long tail of this for me is that my older child, who's 9 now, really is still dealing with that fear of, something happening to me. And so I think, to the extent that you can offset that. I remember coming home from chemo and going out and playing on a swing with the kids in the backyard and getting on the trampoline and doing all this crazy stuff, like trying to, prevent them from having any kind of lasting scars from seeing their mom go through that journey. So anyway.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
I don't know, on celebrating, I mean, I know when I ended both times, we would have just big family celebrations and such. But I think one thing I learned from the second time around, so the first time, of course, losing your hair to me was a real struggle. I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And I realized, and I help other people realize, it's okay, and you should make fun. It should be fun. Mm-hmm. And the second time, when I knew that was going to come out, I bought some fun wigs, and I had some good hats, and I just, I knew it was a complication. So sometimes it was just like, oh, but it does come back, and it's okay.
It's gorgeous.
Thank you. And it comes really good back twice now, because I've lost it all the way to the end. So, but I always had thick hair, so I always like that. But yeah, like I said, it was okay, because then I had hair loss wasn't a big deal the second time around, because it was like, it's okay. I have all my wigs, I have all my hats, I have, I can. It was part of my fun thing. I loved putting on my different wigs, because depending on what I was feeling that day, that I could be a redhead or a blonde or, whatever I wanted to be.
It's so fun. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, I loved when I started losing my hair. We made just a fun time out of it. I had my neighbor come over, and then we got all my kids together, and they took turns cutting my hair into different styles. And at one point it was a mohawk, and that was super fun, because I had a son that liked to do his hair in a mohawk. And so yeah, you just kind of have to roll with it a little bit. But as far as like celebrations, one of my favorite things was just having something to look forward to at the end of everything, like planning it, making it a goal, and then having a little representation of it nearby. So in the weak moments, you're like, okay, I'm going to get there. It's going to be okay. And so that was something that was like just so good for my spirit. And then we did it, when I was done, we did it. And it was just awesome.
I love that. These are such great ideas. So one final question for all of you. Many survivors talk about, and several things have reflected in the conversation, so thank you for sharing. They talk about there was a gift, or there was something that was like a beautiful lesson at the end of it. So anything for you that you would want to share?
So many.
I've heard breast cancer be called the disease of love. Or something like that. And I felt like that is what happened. There was so much love poured out on me and my family, not just from my community, definitely from my community, but just from within my own family. And I would say from my God, I just felt an abundance of love and a reassurance of that. And, it's often in the hard times of our lives that we find that kind of beauty, and it's there. And I was grateful that I got to know that.
Yeah, thank you.
I think gratitude, going, as said, with going through it twice, just always just so grateful that I had the opportunity, because I come in contact with so many that sometimes don't. And I hope I try to look at that and live my life because I am so grateful that I am still here, and I get to see kids and grandkids, all the things that I was so scared about the first time has come to be. And then also the other thing I learned is it's okay, because of chemo and everything, I learned that it's okay to just sit and reflect and relax. And I actually read more on the couch than I ever used to do. And because I realized life,
you have the time.
Life goes on. No, well, it's even after that life, I don't have to be in everything. I can still have time for myself, and it's okay. And other things will get done. So I think I learned to slow down a little bit, and it was okay just to enjoy the life that was around me.
Appreciate the time that you have.
Yeah, and not have to feel like I had to rush to all these things.
I definitely agree with the feeling like you could slow down message. I think that was a huge lesson for me. But I always describe it, when I look at my life before breast cancer and then after, I almost feel like it's like my life went from black and white to Technicolor because there were just so many things. It's not that my life was bad before breast cancer, but I was in the throes of like, working a really busy, stressful job and raising little kids. And I just was kind of like going, and not really enjoying it as much. And what I found after I got through the experience was I felt braver. And so, for example, I attribute this completely to having gone through breast cancer. I had always dreamed of starting my own PR firm, and I just was always afraid to leave the stability of a full-time job. And after I got to the end of my treatment, I said to my husband, I have to do it. I felt like that was the key for me to having my work always support my health, and also being able to have more time with my kids. And it could not have, I mean, it's successful beyond my wildest dreams. And I truly believe it's a miracle from God that I was able to get through it and then create this like the dream life that I had always wanted. And I don't know if I ever would have gotten there if the breast cancer hadn't interrupted it and sort of made me change course. So.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. We really appreciate and loved having you in. Thank you.
Thank you.